The story of the American Revolution didn't begin with grand speeches or declarations. It began with anger, frustration, and a growing sense among the 13 American colonies that they were being pushed into a corner. For years, Britain had tightened its grip, taxing tea, paper, and daily essentials, all while denying the colonists any voice in Parliament. The people of America felt unheard, unseen, and controlled from across an ocean. Protests rose, tempers flared, and something dangerous was building. By early 1775, the colonies were a powder keg, and on one April morning, the spark finally hit the fuse. It started in Boston, a city boiling with rebellion. British commanders learned that colonial militias were secretly storing weapons in the nearby town of Concord. They believed that if they seized these weapons and arrested rebel leaders like Samuel Adams and John Hancock, they could crush the uprising before it exploded into war. So, under the cover of darkness on April 18, 1775, they dispatched around 700 British soldiers to march quietly into the countryside. Their mission: end the rebellion before it truly began. Boston was full of patriots, spies, and watchers, ordinary people willing to risk everything. As the British troops prepared to move, riders raced into the night. Among them was Paul Revere, whose midnight warning would echo through history. Galloping through sleeping villages, he shouted, "The British are coming!" And across the countryside, farmers, shopkeepers, and blacksmiths grabbed their muskets and prepared for the unthinkable, a confrontation with the strongest army on earth. When the sun rose on April 19th, the British soldiers reached the small village of Lexington. Standing on the green were just 70 American militiamen, ordinary citizens who had never imagined they'd be facing trained, uniformed British regulars. The British commander ordered them to disperse. For a moment, it looked like this showdown might end peacefully, but then a single gunshot shattered the silence. No one knows who fired first, but the moment the shot rang out, chaos followed. In seconds, the British opened fire, killing 8 American militiamen. The survivors scattered, and the world witnessed the moment the American Revolution truly began. The British pushed ahead to Concord, but something had changed. The colonists were no longer just resisting, they were fighting back. By the time the British arrived, local militias had gathered in force. At North Bridge, American militiamen advanced toward the British troops in a determined charge. Shots were fired, and this time the British were the ones forced to retreat. The tide of the day had turned. The Empire was no longer in control. As the British began their long march back to Boston, the countryside erupted around them. Hundreds of American fighters used the land they knew so well, hiding behind stone walls, trees, and farmhouses. They fired from every angle, disappearing before the British could respond. What was supposed to be a simple mission turned into a desperate struggle for survival. By the time the British troops staggered back into Boston, they had suffered heavy losses. And more importantly, they realized the truth. The American people were willing to fight for their freedom. News of the battles at Lexington and Concord spread like wildfire. Word traveled from town to town, colony to colony. Ordinary men and women understood what had happened. This wasn't just a protest anymore, it was a revolution. Within weeks, thousands of colonists surrounded Boston, forming the beginnings of the Continental Army. And a little over a year later, the Declaration of Independence would proclaim what these battles had already made clear. The American people were ready to break free from British rule. The significance of that April morning is why historians call the first gunfire the shot heard round the world. It wasn't just the start of a war, it was the beginning of an idea. That ordinary people could stand up to an empire, that freedom was worth fighting for, and that history could be changed by farmers, blacksmiths, and citizens who refused to be silent. The American Revolution would go on for 8 long years, but the moment everything changed, the moment the colonies transformed from subjects to rebels, happened in those quiet Massachusetts towns where courage rose, muskets cracked, and a new nation took its first breath.